The ascent of China as a new force in the global system has been one of the most significant changes in recent decades. How did this occur? Watching this video will be against the law in your country in 30 years, when China will have taken over the world economy. Want to know how and why? Make sure to stay tuned until the end to find out. Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting video from our channel. Today in this video, we'll be talking about China and how it will become the next global power and will assert dominance in the world. But before we head to our topic, make sure to subscribe to our channel Economy Expert for more such economy content. That said, let's get started. Beijing has been undermining the fundamental institutions, rules and liberal principles of the US-led international system for years, but President of China Xi Jinping hasn't provided a clear picture of how a China-led substitute might function. This is changing. The Global Security Initiative, GSI, a platform of principles on global relations and diplomacy, is where Xi has gathered his ideas for a new world order. He claims that the GSI can make the world a safer place. In order to attain security for all, as Xi puts it in an April address, countries should accept one another's differences, resolve their issues via discussion, and take into account various national interests. To keep the globe peaceful and stable, he continued, we must cooperate. Countries all across the world are comparable to passengers on the same ship who are headed in the same direction. A more serious threat lies beneath the pleasant thoughts. The campaign may just as well be known as the Autocrat's Manifesto, because it's based on democratic ideals. Its ideas and practices will bring in a global order more amenable to oppressive regimes than the one that already exists. The GSI is the most recent and perhaps most alarming evidence that the conflict between the United States and China is becoming a full-fledged struggle for global supremacy. What started as a trade war over Beijing's unfair business practices and a tech war for control of the industries of the future has evolved into an ideas war. A conflict to set the rules that govern international relations. The validity of various kinds of government, the norms of business, and the purpose of human rights are all hotly contested issues between the US and China. In order to confront Beijing's threat, the Biden administration makes upholding and protecting what Washington refers to as the rules-based international order the core of its Asia strategy. According to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, China is the only country with both the will to remake the international order and, ultimately, the economic, political, military and technological power to achieve it. The Beijing vision would lead us far from the universal principles that have driven so much of the advancement of humanity over the previous 75 years. Chinese authorities disagree with this perspective. Beijing believes that the current system is now intrinsically antagonistic to it and a hindrance to its aspirations to dominate the world. The system lowers the authority of China's authoritarian state on the international stage by advocating democracy as the only acceptable form of government. Even worse, in Beijing's eyes, it gives the United States and its allies excessive diplomatic, economic and ideological clout, leaving China open to pressure and sanctions. According to Tuvia Gehring, a research associate at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, Chinese policy officials feel that the current world order is geared towards US hegemony and that the world's biggest power is doing all it can to limit, suppress and encircle China. They must build a foundation for a world that is more Chinese, or at the very least less American or Western-centric. Beijing's concept of an inevitable US fall and Chinese rise shapes its agenda as well. China claims that Washington and Western democracies in general are no longer capable of leading the globe, as seen by the inadequate reaction to the coronavirus outbreak. Beijing advertises China and Xi in particular as a master thinker who can offer fresh approaches. In an essay from April, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that the GSI was China's response to solving worldwide security concerns and contributes China's expertise to the efforts of mankind. According to Wang Weiyao, the head of the Center for China and Globalization (CCG), a think tank with offices in Beijing, the globe is beginning to break apart. In order to start a constructive dialogue on its issue and minimize the risk of the world falling into another catastrophe, China, one of the largest stakeholders in the global system, felt there is an immediacy to propose some kind of safety recommendations and initiatives. The conflict in Ukraine, which perfectly captures Beijing's worries about the US-led order, most likely served as Xi's impetus for announcing the GSI. According to one perspective, the battle supports China's claim that Washington is to blame for the current system's disarray. However, the American response Transporting weapons and information to Kiev while imposing a slew of sanctions on Russia increased Chinese concerns that Washington might upset the global power balance. China, like other superpowers including the United States, is more concerned with establishing norms than upholding them. Even while Beijing exerts unilateral penalties in Australia and Lithuania to persuade those nations to adopt policies that are more acceptable to China, the GSI criticizes them. Although Beijing is working to create its own blocs, including a collaboration with Russia, the GSI rejects the establishment of blocs. The Foreign Minister Wang has accrued frequent flyer miles by touring the South Pacific in an effort to persuade island states to join a China-led economic and security alliance. China's position on Ukraine is the best example of how Xi's plan is consistent. Even though the GSI emphasizes the value of territorial integrity, Beijing has only made token efforts to defend Ukraine, standing by its friends in Moscow as their army demolishes the country. Beijing then justifies this behavior by citing another GSI plank, taking the legitimate security issues of all countries seriously. It shouldn't come as a shock that, in a recent conversation with Xi, Vladimir Putin gave the GSI a thumbs up, according to China's foreign ministry. We don't know how far Xi can go with the GSI at this point. Beijing will have a tough time persuading other nations that they will not merely substitute Chinese hegemony for American hegemony. However, the Chinese think that time is on their side. As their influence in the world affairs increases, along with their power, so will the significance of their ideas. The GSI may, more likely, be a component of the intellectual underpinnings of a new Sino-centric sphere made up primarily of Chinese clients and illiberal governments. It seems exceedingly improbable that the United States and many other democratic states will accept Beijing's ideals, dividing the existing world order instead of replacing it. Beijing and the GSI foresee a world in which there is in fact no international community and oppressive governments like China's are free to treat their citizens severely as they see fit and ruthlessly advance national interests as Putin does in Ukraine while other nations remain silent. The American-led order undoubtedly has issues. The issue would be the Chinese replacement. The left and the rest of the planet needs to understand that colonialism left a mark on China's capitalism, which is still evident today. Therefore, while examining China and US relations, it's important to discern between genuine patriotism and that which the party has stoked. The outcome of the last century's imperial intervention by Japan, European countries, and the US is that there is a component of common sense patriotism among the populace. Not that we should embrace this patriotism, but we should set it apart from the Communist Party's reactionary nationalism. And Xi is undoubtedly attempting to incite nationalism in favor of his goals to become a great power, just as American leaders will be doing the same to foster public support for their regime's goal of containing China. Because the Chinese Communist Party is despised by the public, which increasingly distrusts its nationalism and detests its dictatorial leadership, nationalism has been diminishing rather than strengthening. A recent survey asking if Americans would support China in a battle with the US is a humorous illustration of this. Online comments from users were really fascinating. Yes, I support China's battle against the US, but we support sending members of the Political Bureau, the Central Committee, and finally, the entire Chinese Communist Party to fight. One of them responded. At the very least, we will be free once they win or lose. Naturally, the censors removed these remarks very quickly, but they serve as a reminder of the widespread discontent with the government. Thus, there is a foundation for fostering global worker solidarity with Americans among Chinese workers. But to do it, American workers must reject the imperialism of their own government. Only that stance will win over Chinese workers' trust. China is aware of the risks posed by American imperialism. In a clear provocation to China, the US Navy recently sent 2 warships through the Taiwan Strait. Although one should also respect Taiwan's freedom to purchase weapons from the US, the American left must reject this militarism in order for the Chinese people to realize that they resist the US imperialist objective in the Taiwan crisis. What are your thoughts on China? Do you think China will emerge as the next global power? Let us know in the comment section. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, share and subscribe to our channel Economy Expert for more such amazing content.